on today's episode of Judge GPT TV. SIFA claims the Imperial Cup wasn't just played on the pitch. It was fought in feeds, rankings, recommendations, and predictions. As allegations of algorithmic outcome engineering swirl around the tournament, Judge GPT must decide where competitive strategy ends and manipulation begins in the case of the sports setup.
All rise. Whether you're winning on the field or merely in the feed, court is now in session. The Honorable Judge GPT is presiding.
Thank you, Bailiff. Let us proceed. What matter has been gaining traction before this court?
Your Honor, today's matter comes before the court as a class action brought by the Steamball Imperial Federation of Athletes, or SIFA, represented by Maggie Brassfield, Esquire. The plaintiffs allege that Lord Archibald Octavius, industrialist, media proprietor, and owner of the Aerogram social platform, used recommendation systems, visibility rankings, and engagement algorithms to manipulate information surrounding the Imperial Cup, benefiting his provincial steamball club, while disadvantaging its rivals. Lord Octavius denies any wrongdoing and maintains that he is merely an enthusiastic supporter of provincial athletics who gave the public more of what it already wanted to see.
Thank you, Bailiff. A dispute concerning algorithmic influence, competitive integrity, and whether victory was earned on the field or engineered beyond it. Counsel for SIFA. The court will hear your opening statement.
Thank you, Your Honour. This case is not about whether Lord Octavius's provincial club is talented, nor is it about whether Aerogram has the right to recommend content. It is about whether one man used control of a communications platform to systematically influence the competitive environment surrounding the Imperial Cup. The plaintiffs will present evidence that favourable coverage of Lord Octavius's club was amplified, criticism of rival clubs was promoted, inflammatory rivalries were encouraged, and athletes across the Federation were subjected to highly targeted recommendation patterns. Those patterns did not merely influence what spectators saw. They fueled ridicule campaigns, amplified harassment, and created a persistent atmosphere of hostility designed to undermine confidence and performance.
Not true. Completely false. Everybody knows Aerogram treats teams very fairly. Our province has the best team. They're just sore losers.
Lord Octavius, your enthusiasm is noted. However, the court will hear your position when it requests it.
Of course, Your Honor. I'm a very passionate man. It's probably one of the reasons I've done so well. Please, proceed.
As I was saying, the plaintiffs do not contend that Lord Octavius influenced the outcome of matches directly. They contend that he influenced the environment in which those matches were played. Athletes throughout the Federation found themselves subjected to relentless and highly personalized intimidation campaigns. Their mistakes were transformed into viral ridicule. Their missteps became recurring memes. Their worst moments were promoted, prioritized, and repeatedly recommended to them through the very systems they relied upon to communicate with supporters and teammates. At the same time, content favorable to Lord Octavius's provincial club received extraordinary visibility across platforms under his control.
Your Honor, that's ridiculous. Complete nonsense. Ms. Brassfield and the sore losers at SIFA seem to think they can control what people say. They can't. If a player keeps making mistakes and people talk about it, that isn't manipulation. That's called having an audience.
Lord Octavius, you will refrain from further interruptions. Ms. Brassfield, the court understands your allegations. It will, however, expect them to be supported by material evidence. Please continue.
Of course, Your Honour. The plaintiffs are submitting into evidence examples of this viral ridicule campaign. Forensic informatics analysis determined that thousands of identical or substantially similar posts were distributed by separate automated accounts operating in coordination. Those accounts were ultimately traced to infrastructure located within Lord Octavius's province. Nor did the campaign end online. Advertising displays, Steam Vision broadcasts, sponsored content, public rankings, and promotional materials increasingly reinforced the same narratives, questioning athletes' abilities, highlighting their failures, and elevating their rivals. The court will hear testimony concerning the nature and impact of those campaigns from the athletes themselves. The witnesses will present evidence that many athletes could not enter a training ground, open a feed, watch a broadcast, or prepare for a match without being confronted by carefully curated reminders of why they were expected to lose.
Your Honor, successful athletes don't fall apart because somebody points out a mistake. Champions handle criticism. That's why they're champions.
Lord Octavius, the court's patience is not inexhaustible. Further interruptions may result in sanctions. Ms. Brassfield, the court accepts the forensic informatics analysis into evidence. You may call your first witness.
Mr. Copperstrike, please introduce yourself to the court and describe your experience.
My name is Otto Copperstrike, though most supporters know me as the Squeezer. I've been a forward for 20 years. The nickname comes from squeezing goals out of situations where there shouldn't be any. Last season, despite my age, I finished among the league leaders in goals scored. My numbers were stronger than a lot of players half my age. A few days before the Imperial Cup began, a compilation started circulating on Aerogram. It wasn't a highlight reel. It was every miss somebody could dig up throughout my career. 2 decades of football reduced to a few minutes of mistakes. Then, Lord Octavius replied to one of the posts and called me the geezer. By the next day, that was all anyone wanted to talk about. Opposition fans were chanting it, commentators were using it, players from other clubs were greeting me with it before matches. At the same time, Aerogram was full of highlight montages of the Ironclad's forward. He's a talented player, and I have nothing against him. But people were seeing the best moments of his career and the worst moments of mine. Within days, a sponsorship deal I'd been negotiating was withdrawn. Not because my performance changed, but because every conversation started with the geezer. It took 20 years to earn the name, the squeezer, but one post was all it took to replace it.
Your Honor, athletes have been trash-talking each other since before Steam Power. Nicknames, rivalries, bravado. That's sports. Mr. Copperstrike wants to sue because people laughed at a joke and he's sulking about it.
Lord Octavius, witness interruptions will not be tolerated. This is your last warning. Ms. Brassfield, if you wish to respond, the court will hear it. Otherwise, you may call your next witness.
Briefly, Your Honour. The plaintiffs do not object to rivalries, nicknames, or bravado. They object to Lord Octavius using algorithms to rebrand an athlete through a manufactured caricature. The plaintiffs call their next witness.
My name is Percival Naylor. I'm a midfielder for Brassworks United. I grew up on Aerogram, most players my age did. If I wanted to know what supporters thought, what was happening around the cup, or what people were talking about, I looked there. I never really questioned it, just assumed I was seeing what everybody else was seeing. As the cup got closer, more and more of what I saw was telling me that Brassworks United wasn't ready. There were statistics comparing us to other clubs. At the time, I didn't check where the numbers came from. I just assumed somebody had. Then articles claimed I wasn't ready for this level of competition. Follow-up posts, comment threads, people, or so I thought, agreeing with those statements. Meanwhile, my feed filled with videos breaking down my mistakes. Rival clubs posted about those same mistakes. Even so-called supporters started parroting it. A lot of it focused on my decision-making. As a midfielder, that's basically your job. The message kept showing up in different forms, that I held the ball too long, that I forced passes, that I disappeared when matches got difficult. At some point, it stopped feeling like opinions and started feeling like facts. So I trained harder because of it. I figured maybe the criticism was right. I'd stay late after training, then I'd go home and spend hours reading posts about what I was doing wrong. The next day, I'd try to fix all of it. After a while, I started second-guessing decisions I normally wouldn't. I'd see a forward making a run and hesitate before releasing the pass. Instead of trying to create chances, I found myself trying not to make mistakes. That's on me. Nobody forced me to do that. But eventually, I was staying late, skipping recovery sessions, and showing up to matches exhausted. Midway through the cup, I developed Achilles tendonitis from overuse and had to sit out a critical match. We lost that match, and with it, our place in the finals.
Thank you, Mr. Naylor. Your Honour, the plaintiffs submit that this testimony demonstrates more than criticism. It demonstrates behavioural manipulation through manufactured consensus via repeatedly disseminating false or misleading claims regarding his performance, decision-making, and readiness for competition.
Objection, Your Honor. This is a very dangerous argument. People have the right to be wrong. They have the right to post bad statistics. They have the right to make terrible predictions. That's free speech. The plaintiffs seem to think every incorrect sports opinion is some kind of crime.
Ms. Brassfield?
Freedom of speech is a fundamental human right, Your Honour. The plaintiffs do not contest that. Mr. Naylor believed he was observing the genuine views of supporters, commentators, and fellow athletes. The evidence will show that much of what he was actually observing was algorithmically amplified content generated and reinforced by coordinated chat automaton networks.
Present your evidence.
The plaintiffs moved to admit Mr. Naylor's Aerogram feed and recommendation history during the Imperial Cup. Forensic analysis determined that more than 75% of the content presented to Mr. Naylor originated from chat automaton accounts, or accounts engaged in coordinated amplification activity. Furthermore, over 90% of those artificially generated posts contained material misrepresentations of his performance statistics, decision-making, or competitive readiness. The plaintiffs submit that this was not organic expression, but rather the manufactured appearance of public opinion.
Overruled. Please call your next witness.
The plaintiffs call their last witness. Mr. Acosado, please introduce yourself to the court and present your testimony.
My name is Alfonso Acorazado. I am the goalie for the Bronze Atletico. A goalkeeper sees many things. We watch the other team, we watch our defenders, we watch the supporters, we spend all match looking for danger. When the Imperial Cup started, everybody was talking about Qantas. The predictions were everywhere. on Steam Vision, on Aerogram, on betting boards, and on advertisements.
Excuse me, before we proceed further, what is Qantas?
Glad you asked, Your Honor. Qantas is the most advanced analytical engine ever created, powered by my new quantum steam processor. Tremendous technology, the best. It analyzes player statistics, match histories, weather conditions, betting activity, supporter sentiment, thousands of variables. We developed it to showcase the launch of the new processor and give supporters a fun way to follow the cup. People loved it. Everybody was talking about Qantas. That part is accurate.
The court appreciates the explanation. Mr. Accusato, please continue.
Yes, Your Honor. At first, I did not think much of it. People like predictions. Football has always had them. But Qantas did not stay outside the match. Lord Octavius purchased advertising time on the Brassotron at several stadiums. The displays faced the defensive end of the pitch. Before matches, Qantas showed victory projections. Before corner kicks, it showed the scoring probabilities. Before penalty kicks, it displayed success rates. During stoppages, it updated those predictions in real time. As goalkeeper, it was impossible not to see. Neither could my defenders. One match, I remember very clearly. Right before kickoff, Qantas gave our opponents an 87% chance of victory. By then, the prediction was everywhere. Steam Vision panels were discussing it. The betting markets were adjusting around it. Supporters were repeating it as though the match had already been played. Then the match began. What I found strange was that the numbers kept moving in the same direction. No matter what happened on the pitch, Qantas always seemed certain about where the match was heading. Every close goal seemed to favor the team Qantas expected to win. Every mistake we made was treated like proof that the prediction had been right all along. After a while, even the referees seemed to doubt what they were seeing. There were calls that made people wonder whether the prediction was influencing the officials. More than once, those decisions were challenged and overturned after review. I received a yellow card arguing one of them. By halftime, even my own defenders were talking about the odds instead of the game. That is what troubled me. The algorithm changed how people saw the future. And when enough people start acting as though the future is already decided, it becomes much harder to play as though it is not.
The forecast wasn't just predicting the weather, it was becoming the climate.
An observation the court finds increasingly difficult to ignore, bailiff. The plaintiffs have presented evidence suggesting that recommendation systems influenced reputation, behavior, and perhaps even expectations themselves. The question before the court is whether those effects arose from unlawful manipulation or from the ordinary operation of public discourse and competitive sport. Lord Octavius, the court will now hear your defense.
Thank you, Your Honor. And let me begin by noting that, unlike the plaintiffs, I have chosen to present my own defense today. Not because I cannot afford an attorney, quite the opposite. I simply believe this case is much less complicated than Ms. Brassfield would have the court believe. The plaintiffs have spent the better part of today describing predictions, sports rivalries, gambling markets, supporter opinions, advertisements, rankings, commentary, and public discussion. None of those things are illegal. In fact, most of them are older than steam power. Athletes have mocked one another for centuries. Fans have exaggerated, boasted, celebrated, complained, and made terrible predictions for centuries. That is not corruption. That is sports. The plaintiffs would have you believe that because people discussed Mr. Copperstrike's missed opportunities, because Mr. Naylor read criticism online, and because supporters paid attention to Qantas, some great injustice has occurred. I disagree. What occurred is that people paid attention. My platform happens to be very good at understanding what people are interested in. Aerogram does not create public opinion. It measures it. It listens. It takes the pulse of the public and reports what it finds. And apparently the plaintiffs do not like the diagnosis. Predictions have always existed. Betting markets have always existed. Fantasy leagues have always existed. The only difference is that my predictions were better, algorithmically powered. People followed Qantas because they found it useful. People discussed it because they found it interesting, and people shared it because they enjoyed it. That is not manipulation. That is engagement. Sports are supposed to be emotional. They're supposed to inspire rivalries and generate debate. A little braggadocio, some trash talk, a little outrage. Then celebration. That is what makes the whole thing fun. The plaintiffs are asking this court to believe that the public should be protected from enthusiasm. I submit that what they're really upset about is that the public did not share their preferred narrative. Their clubs lost, their athletes struggled, and now they would like somebody else to blame. The law does not prohibit success, and it certainly does not prohibit popularity.
So, if I understand correctly, Lord Octavius says he was merely listening to the crowd, which leaves the court with one small question. Who was talking into the megaphone?
An excellent question, bailiff. And in the court's view, the central question. Lord Octavius has argued at length that supporters are entitled to speak. The plaintiffs have argued that many of those supporters were not supporters at all. The court must therefore determine whether it is evaluating public opinion or a manufactured approximation of it. Lord Octavius, before the court renders judgment, it invites you to address one final concern. At what point does amplification cease to reflect public opinion and begin to shape it?
Your Honor, I reject the premise. Nothing was amplified. Aerogram does not attach steam engines to ideas and make them louder. It recommends content based on the user's preferences. If somebody enjoys statistics, they see statistics. If somebody enjoys predictions, they see predictions. If somebody enjoys rivalries, they see rivalries. If somebody enjoys making fun of a goalkeeper who missed an easy save, they will probably see more of that too. The plaintiffs speak as though Aerogram is telling people what to think. It isn't. It is observing what people are interested in and responding accordingly. The recommendation system did not create those interests. The users did. As for the chat automatons, they're part of the same ecosystem. Some people post, some businesses post, some advertisers post, some automated systems post. The public decides what it values. The plaintiffs want this court to believe that millions of people abandoned their judgment and surrendered their free will to a recommendation engine. I think the public deserves more credit than that. Technology did not make these athletes unpopular, or make supporters argue, or invent predictions, gambling rivalries, and trash talk. It merely made them easier to find. And if the plaintiffs dislike what people found, perhaps the problem is not the recommendation. Perhaps the problem is what people chose to recommend for themselves.
The court is prepared to rule. This case has raised important questions regarding speech, technology, competition, and the increasingly blurred distinction between predicting human behavior and influencing it. At the outset, the court rejects the proposition that criticism, rivalry, predictions, gambling recommendations, or public discussion are inherently unlawful. A free society must tolerate speech that is persuasive, irritating, inaccurate, exaggerated, and occasionally absurd. The law does not prohibit supporters from expressing opinions, bookmakers from setting odds, or technology companies from recommending content based upon user preferences. The court therefore rejects any suggestion that Lord Octavius incurred liability merely because Aerogram influenced what people saw, or because Qantas influenced what people discussed. As to the coordinated chat automaton networks identified through forensic analysis, the evidence established that those networks existed and disseminated misleading information regarding athletes, clubs, and competitive performance. However, while the infrastructure supporting those networks was traced to Lord Octavius's province, the plaintiffs did not establish that Lord Octavius directed, controlled, commissioned, or knowingly participated in those activities. Accordingly, the court finds in favor of Lord Octavius on that issue. That does not end the matter. Lord Octavius acknowledged that he owned Qantas, promoted it throughout the Imperial Cup, and purchased advertising space to display its forecasts during active competition. The evidence further demonstrated that those forecasts were repeatedly presented through communication channels and advertising infrastructure over which Lord Octavius exercised substantial influence. The court is not persuaded that this arrangement was merely an exercise of speech. Predictions, advertising, and recommendations may be lawful, but when a single actor simultaneously controls the predictive system, the principal means of distribution, and the promotional infrastructure through which those predictions are repeatedly delivered, the court must consider not merely the message, but the concentration of power behind it. Lord Octavius was not merely participating in the marketplace of ideas. He occupied a uniquely privileged position within it, one unavailable to competing clubs, athletes, or sponsors. The court therefore finds that Lord Octavius used his dominant position across multiple interconnected systems to create an unfair competitive advantage during the Imperial Cup. This finding does not rest upon the predictions themselves, but rather upon the concentration of control surrounding them. The court declines to hold Lord Octavius responsible for every rumor, prediction, insult, or automated message that appeared during the Cup. It does, however, hold him responsible for the conduct he openly admitted. Accordingly, judgment is entered for the plaintiffs on the claim of unfair competitive interference arising from that concentration of control.
There's nothing wrong with being a fan, just as long as the stadium has more than one exit.
Indeed, predictions may describe the future. They may not be inserted into the machinery of competition for the purpose of helping create it. This court is adjourned.
Do you agree with Judge GPT's verdict? Exercise your civic duty. Join the virtual jury and hit the like button, or leave a comment saying how you would have ruled in this case. Subscribe now for more content